Hey, so Rick and Morty's coming back. Did you know that? November 2019, we're gonna get more Rick and Morty adventures, and it's actually been renewed for 70 more episodes spread across a whole lot of seasons. So we're gonna be seeing a lot of it. Probably some new characters, maybe one called Flomfleeb, maybe another one called Schlippy Schlumpers. Who knows what's in store? Now, when season 3 of Rick and Morty was airing, it seems like the show reached a tipping point of popularity, and the fan base erupted in a lot of different ways.
I'm Kendall Rick!
And hey, that sucked. I hated that, as I'm sure a lot of you did. I love Rick and Morty, and that sucked. You're giving all Rick and Morty fans a bad name. Please don't act like this. So today, as we approach the 4th season of the show, I thought I'd take a look at what it is about Rick and Morty that makes people connect with it so much. I mean, even an internationally popular show like Friends didn't have people flipping out like Rick and Morty has. Nobody ran into any fast food restaurant shouting Joey Tribbiani catchphrases. Hey, how you doing? I mean, a lot of people did get the Rachel haircut. I guess that is something. Now, to be fair, you have to have a very high IQ to understand Rick and Morty. The humor is extremely subtle, and without a solid grasp of theoretical physics, now I'm just kidding, we're not gonna do that whole meme thing. So I think a big part of why people connect with the show and become obsessed with it is because of the show's co-creator Dan Harmon and something that he's obsessed with. See, Dan Harmon has an obsession with circles and with a man who passed away 32 years ago. That's right, some of the things that are the most influential to the Adult Swim show Rick and Morty are a simple closed geometric shape and a guy who just missed the release of Die Hard by like a year. So let's start with that guy. Brilliant guy named Joseph Campbell. Campbell just like the soup, except he has nothing to do with that company. Although it was also founded by a Joseph Campbell, but that's neither here nor there. Our Joseph Campbell was a professor of literature at Sarah Lawrence College in New York, and his field of study was comparative mythology. So this guy compared myths and stories and legends and dreams throughout mankind's history and found that, hey, these all boil down to pretty much the exact same story. What is going on here? He called this thing the monomyth, or the hero's journey. And he wrote a book about this called The Hero with a Thousand Faces, and let me tell you, I tried to read it and it is dense. It is a slog to read. I mean, look at this passage. See if you enjoy this. The fantasy is a reassurance, promise that the piece of paradise, which was known first within the mother womb, is not to be lost, that it supports the present and stands in the future as well as in the past, is Omega as well as Alpha, that though omnipotence may seem to be endangered by the threshold passages and life awakening. This is one sentence. Do you see what I'm saying? This is one sentence. Was that fun for you? Did you enjoy that? I didn't. So even though it's a dense book in my low attention span having opinion, there's some great information in there, and Dan Harmon became obsessed with it and basically what makes a story. He decided, and I thank him for this, to make this whole thing a little more digestible. Similar thing to what Soup Joseph Campbell must have told himself too, I imagine. Dan Harmon took this work by Joseph Campbell, boiled it down to its essence, and made what he calls the story circle. It's a little more complicated than just a circle. It's broken up into 8 points, 8 elements that are needed to create a satisfying story. These elements are ingrained in our subconscious, or as Dan Harmon puts it, storytelling comes naturally to humans, but since we live in an unnatural world, we sometimes need a little help doing what we naturally do. And if you change storytelling to pooping, brother, you've got yourself a fantastic ad for a laxative company, so, do with that as you will. I don't know why I brought that up. So what are these 8 elements that make up a story? Well, I'm gonna tell you. A character is in a zone of comfort, but they want something. They enter an unfamiliar situation, adapt to it, get what they wanted, pay a heavy price for it, then return to their familiar situation, having changed. This is what our brains recognize as a satisfying story, and Dan Harmon is obsessed with making sure that everything he does fits into the story circle. And he's been doing this for a long time. Back before YouTube was even a thing, Dan Harmon and frequent collaborator Rob Schrab created a website/monthly film festival competition thing called Channel 101. People from all over the world could submit 5-minute episodes. Every month people would vote on them, and if your show was in the top 5, you got to make another episode. And I'm sorry for the quality here, but this is like early 2000s online video here. People were like, whoa, 360p, that's pretty good. Anyway, Channel 101 is a lot of fun. The Lonely Island guys used to make stuff on there. They had the longest running show called The Boo, kind of making fun of the OC. Jack Black starred in a show on there called Computer Man. Drew Carey was in one called Call Me Cobra. There was a lot of fun, weird internet stuff going on there. If you want to see some weird internet stuff from like 15-20 years ago, you should definitely check it out. Anyway, as a joke, Dan Harmon made a show pilot called Laser Fart. And Laser Fart was about a guy who, after heating a burrito in a malfunctioning microwave, developed the ability to fart lasers out of his butt. That's where farts come from, that's where the lasers come from. The logic was sound. And Dan Harmon took this ridiculous concept and made sure it hit all the elements of the story circle. It even had a card at the end saying that Laser Fart was based on The Hero with 1,000 Faces by Joseph Campbell. And Laser Fart, which was a joke, actually became a big hit that people connected with, and it lasted 10 episodes, which is a long time on Channel 101. This story circle is something that he's brought with him throughout his career, and by sticking to it, it makes people connect with the stories he tells. Like Community. Community is a show that flirted with cancellation pretty much every single season it was on, but the people that were fans of the show were fans of the show. Like, they connected with this thing. So much so that when it finally was canceled by NBC, the reaction from fans convinced Yahoo Screen to pick it up for a final season. So the fact that Dan Harmon is one of the creative forces behind every single episode of Rick and Morty, making sure that they all fit into this method of storytelling that connects with humans in a way we're hardwired to respond to, that's a huge reason why people fall in love with Rick and Morty. Another reason why people fall in love with it is that it's, insane. It's a crazy show full of unexpected moments. It's just, stuff happens in this show that you will never see in another show. A big part of that has to do with the show's other co-creator, Justin Roiland. Now, this isn't to say that Dan Harmon doesn't have a whole lot of craziness to him. He absolutely does. I mean, Community was not afraid to get weird, but Justin Roiland, man, he's got a whole other level of weird going on. Dan and Justin actually met because of Channel 101 back in the day. Justin was submitting stuff all the time. Weird stuff.
I guess being a newspaper reporter is really fun.
And the most successful weird thing he did on Channel 101 was a show called House of Cosby's. And funny enough, this is what ended up leading to Rick and Morty. House of Cosby's was about a guy that lived with a bunch of clones of Bill Cosby, and they did just all kinds of stuff. And back then, Bill Cosby unfortunately still had an image to protect, so he sent a cease and desist letter threatening to sue everybody. As a response to that lawsuit, Justin Roiland made the most obviously not okay ripoff of a famous property. He made The Real Adventures of Doc and Marty, just the most insanely inappropriate thing he could think of that would absolutely get some lawyers upset. And these two characters probably look a little familiar and should sound familiar too.
The time travel car won't start. Oh no! What can we do?
After that, Dan Harmon and Justin Roiland started working on stuff together. And when Adult Swim approached Dan Harmon about a show, he approached Justin Roiland, and they crafted Rick and Morty into something that really plays to both of their strengths. They've both said that the goal is to stay in front of the audience. And with the show they've set up, I mean with alternate dimensions and aliens and time travel, the limit is literally their imagination. And Justin Roiland has a weird one of those. They also leave enough space for improvised lines and hesitations, and they keep in flubbed readings. They've made it impossible to predict where a sentence is gonna go, let alone an entire episode. What does that mean for the audience? Well, it's constantly exciting. You never know what to expect. People enjoy being surprised, and this show has a whole lot of that. And speaking of things people love things that make them feel smart. There's a reason that The Big Bang Theory ran for 12 seasons. Hey, he said a science thing and I laughed. I must also be smart. There's definitely a lot of that going on in Rick and Morty's fan base. Probably more so on the toxic side of the fan base. Because the show's not afraid to dip its toes in science-sounding talk and broad strokes of philosophy and whatnot, a lot of people are like, this is a show for smart people. If you don't like this show, you are dumb, and you don't get it. But I do, because I'm smart. That's how you end up with posts like this. That's where that comes from. Vice actually did a quick interview with Dr. Pragya Agarwal, and she's an actual scientist, and so they asked her if she thinks people need a high level of science knowledge to be able to get Rick and Morty. She said, no, I don't think anyone needs a high level of scientific knowledge. It has many layers, and so for a non-scientific person, it's designed to be funny, and employs more standard science fiction references that would be familiar to anyone. Vice then asked, so you don't need to be a genius to understand any of the science references then? She said, quote, quote, "No, the point of the show is accessibility. Many of the scientific ideas are inaccurate and so not really based in science. But because a lot of these things are about smart things, they do make people feel smart when they get the jokes. And they will get very protective about things that make them feel smart and be very loyal to them and sometimes become toxic. The big question that still needs to be answered is, can Dan Harmon and Justin Roiland keep this up for 70 more episodes? There have only been 31 so far. That is a tall order. It's tough for long-running shows to keep things fresh. They've already saved the world and the universe and reality a bunch of times. With the stakes having already been so high, it'll be interesting to see how they keep things, well, interesting. Thanks for watching that video, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. Are you looking forward to season 4 of Rick and Morty, or have the fans kind of ruined it for you? Do you think the show will be able to live up to the 31 episodes we've already seen? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section. Thanks again for watching, and check back soon for a new video.